It says, using the solubility rules, circle the ionic compounds that are insoluble in water. So insoluble is the key word here. So the solubility rules are here. And what you'll notice is there's not very many cations on here. The only soluble cations are lithium plus, sodium plus, and ammonium. So 1A metals, basically. Lithium, sodium, potassium, so on and so forth. Then everything else on the table is anions. On the top, we have soluble compounds. So your nitrates, your acetates, your halides, and your sulfates. Note there are some exceptions for your halides and your sulfates. Your insoluble compounds and anions are on the bottom. Those are your carbonates, your phosphates, your sulfides, and your hydroxides. So the point here is, when you're looking at PbCl2, you're not going to look at lead 2 to find the solubility. You're going to have to look at Cl, because the only cations, positive ions, on here are the 1A metals, and they're always soluble, and lead is, of course, not a 1A metal. It's not lithium or sodium or potassium. So let's take a look here. So we want to find the chloride. So chlorides are on the top, so they're generally soluble. But if you look here, lead 2 plus is an exception. So lead 2 chloride is an insoluble compound. Potassium phosphate. So here, what you see is you have a 1A metal. So when you have a 1A metal, the most common ones are lithium, sodium, and potassium, then you know it's going to be soluble, because your 1A metal compounds are always soluble. Let's say you went for the phosphate. If you went for the phosphate, what you'd find is the phosphate is an anion and it's insoluble. But the exceptions are the 1A metals and ammonium, which are always soluble. So this one is soluble. Silver nitrate. You're not going to find silver on the table. So what we need to do is we need to look for nitrate. So nitrate is a soluble anion. It's on the top part. And if we look here, there are no exceptions. So silver nitrate is soluble. Here we have copper 2 carbonate. You're not going to find copper 2 on the list. So look for carbonate. If we look for carbonate here, we'll see that it's an insoluble compound because it's on the bottom half of the table, and copper is not an exception. So copper 2 carbonate is insoluble. Calcium bromide. We're not going to find calcium on the list, but we can find bromide. Bromide is a halogen. So if we look here, we have bromide here, and if we look, these are no, calcium is no exception. So calcium bromide is soluble. Magnesium hydroxide. We're not going to find magnesium on the list. Let's look up hydroxide. Hydroxides are on the bottom here, and if we look, the exceptions are the 1A metals, calcium, strontium, and barium. Magnesium is no exception, so this one is insoluble. Magnesium hydroxide is the stuff in milk of magnesia.